in power in Washington hasn't changed.
Oh, I think we address it by more shared sacrifice. It means you close tax loopholes on hedge fund managers, on oil companies, and on companies that outsource jobs. It means you look at fair defense cuts. It means you look at other kinds of cuts in the budget. You eliminate the direct payments to agriculture. That's $23 billion. We've done that in my legislation with John Thune from South Dakota in the Senate. They haven't done it in the House yet. There are multiple major savings going in the right direction. It doesn't have to be solved now. It needs to be worked on now in a serious, principled way in going in that direction. When we did the Clinton budget in 93, it didn't balance the budget by 96 or 97, but it balanced the budget and yielded a huge surplus by 2000. So we get on the right, I hate this term, glide course, but we get on the right glide path, whatever. That soothes and comforts the markets. So I think that moves in the right direction that way. And you need economic growth. I mean, you can't cut your way out of this. And we can do some things that spur economic growth better than we have, and that's going to take bipartisanship.
Do you think House Republicans would be more likely to go along with this?
I hope so.
Than they were yesterday?
I think House Republicans, if John Boehner changes one thing, House Republicans will do their jobs better. If he says, instead of having a majority of his caucus to bring a bill to the floor, he needs a majority of the House of Representatives. Because a majority of his caucus allows the far-right Tea Party people in his caucus to hold the entire House and Senate and White House hostage. But to say that if you could put a bill on the floor, the transportation bill, he easily could have got 218 votes, but he didn't have half the Republicans, half plus one. So if he's willing to make that change, things change dramatically, and I think the business community is going to push him to do that.
Senator, as you look back on this campaign, is there anything that you regret saying or doing?
No, nothing that I can think of.
Do you ever think you might lose?
No.
Across the spectrum of your political career, where does this victory rank, and is it particularly satisfying, or?
I'm too tired to answer that question. This was the hardest because of the money. I mean, to wake up, we had in October, at one point we had 8 different outside groups spending money against us. None of them painting particularly flattering physical or message portraits. And it was something like 50,000 ads against us. And you know, I could feel it. I could feel it from people's responses to me. It also helped energize our base, of course, because nobody had ever seen anything like this. And my colleagues around the country were just flabbergasted that they could spend this much money in a race and that we could survive. But this was the hardest I've ever been in. But I also had the best team ever. I mean, this campaign, the grassroots effort, the media effort, the fundraising effort, we have 100,000 contributors averaging about $73 or $4 per contribution. We have hundreds of thousands of people online in our Ohio areas that did all kinds of grassroots stuff. We had clearly the best organization of any state Senate candidate in any state party in the country. And the Sarah Benzing is the campaign manager, and Justin Boraski is the communications director, and Kimberly Padilla is the finance director. We're just, I should stop there. I shouldn't have started with names, but we're just unbelievable, best I've ever seen. We had a great race with John Ryan running in 2006, the challenges, and he was exactly right person there. The challenges this year, because of the money, were so much greater, and all of us pulled together. And I'm just so proud of what they were all able to do, and especially my family, Connie and Elizabeth, who was at the state party, is at the state party, and the work that they did, and I just wake up thankful and in awe.
Were there any coattail effects either way in terms of your turnout and your vote helping Obama or vice versa?
I think there was some synergism there. I mean, the president's turnout operation, which was integrated with ours, was helpful, you know, in certain places, and ours was helpful to him in certain places. But I think the synergism of talking auto and talking currency, talking China trade enforcement, and his focus on community colleges and his focus on small businesses and our work together there. I mean, I had a couple of things that he didn't have, I suppose. I mean, I'm here all the time, but what I had also was first Ohioan ever to serve on the Senate Veterans Committee for a full term, and first Ohioan in 40 years to serve on the Senate Ag Committee. I grew up working on a family farm, and I think that helped me in small town Ohio, and I spend so much time working on veterans issues, especially, I mentioned last night, Connie mentioned last night, my Senate, the work we've done on for middle-aged veterans who are always forgotten. The veteran that's 35 years old now is no longer eligible for the GI Bill, that loses her job. She's got nowhere to turn. Now she does, because of the Veterans Retraining Assistance Program that we wrote in the Veterans Committee that focuses right on the veterans 35 to 60 who have far too high rates of unemployment. So I was able to do that the president couldn't do, but it's his big microphone and his leadership that was the umbrella for all of us too.
Senator, given what you said about all the outside money, what do you think about the future of sort of the Karl Rove strategy of bringing in billionaires to fund elections?
Karl Rove had a bad night, and you could see he was. You could see his impatience and his frustration in that Fox interview, which I must admit I watched this morning, that Connie pulled up, when he couldn't understand his strategy in Ohio. I mean, not to egg him on for 6 years later, but Karl Rove doesn't know Ohio as well as he thinks he does. Evidenced by the fact that he thought $40 million against me and his efforts against the president would bring Barack Obama and me both down. And I think that he couldn't, so he had to argue, well, these numbers aren't right, even though the Fox experts, both their political and their technical experts, were saying, as were the other networks, that Ohio's over. And he just couldn't bring himself to believe that. And so I think Rove thinks of Ohio as kind of, I don't want to put words about it, he thinks of Ohio as one of his specialties and one of his favorite places to do politics. And I don't say he's not welcome here. He's always welcome here. We look forward to him coming to somewhere in Ohio and making a speech and doing what he does here and helping the local economy. I'm fine with that, but I think his brand of politics is pretty discredited. Doesn't mean it's the door's shut and will never happen again. It just means it was pretty discredited in Ohio last night. And that's really good news for a good mix of Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. It's good news for everybody.
Just on that, in the aggregate, the amount of ads, the quality of ads, did they backfire, or did they make the race closer?
The race, clearly, I mean, the $40 million makes the race closer. I mean, you couldn't spend $40 million without having huge impact. I think the one ad, if you suggest one ad that really didn't work for their side, was the whole idea of the Chrysler, what they did at Jeep Chrysler. You may have noticed in my speech last night, or in Connie's speech last night, I wrote this part. I mean, I wrote the whole speech, but I know you don't believe that because she's such a good writer, but I actually really did. But we, with the Chrysler, the comments I made about Chrysler is and this tells the whole story. 300 electricians and 475 other building trades, carpenters, laborers, sheet metal workers, and others, were in the Jeep plant. They've been there for months and will be there another year, getting the Jeep plant ready for production of its new line that will replace the Jeep Liberty. The Jeep Wrangler will continue. This is to replace the Jeep Liberty. You don't put 775 building tradesmen and women on a manufacturing job site for, I don't know, 2 years. I don't know exactly the amount of time, 18 months, 2 years, 2.5 years. You don't put them in there if you're not planning on real growth in that company, in that business, on that job site. And that's why I said last night that this Jeep plant, these 300 electricians in this Jeep plant in Toledo, which is in Ohio, which is in the United States of America. And I think that they badly misfired thinking Ohioans would be so gullible and stupid. And it was insulting to auto workers, but it was insulting to the waitress that works across the street from the Jeep plant. It was insulting to all of us as Ohioans who knew that we had to do the auto rescue. And that's all of us.
Senator, we won Ohio by quite a bit. So did the president. House delegation for Ohio is still heavily Republican. Do you have any thoughts on why that's the case, and also on issue 2?
Yeah, I know why it's the case, because of your second question, Sabrina, that Ohio's districts are drawn so that, the way city communities are divided. Lorain County, where I live, has 3 different members of Congress, including the one that represents me, represents, I think, Dover, New Philly, too. Same, and we live 5 miles from Lake Erie. The breaking up of what I think Tuscarawas County is divided into, Ross County, all these smaller counties, they didn't need to do this, but they did, and that's why they draw the map, they win the seats. It's pretty much that simple. But I think on issue 2, there was so little focus on how important it was because of the presidential and the Senate races, that the voters didn't really tune into it. I think we didn't get off to a good start on that issue because of the focus on so much else. I think the voters want change. We didn't present it to them. Those supporting issue 2, and I was one of them, didn't present that issue to them as forthrightly as we should have and give the voters a better sense of what it meant.